Welcome to the Emo Coin Chat Series. I'm here talking to the amazing George Howard, professor at Berklee College of Music, founder of GHS Strategic, ran Rykodisc, is a co-founder of Tunecore, and just an expert in so many areas. So, George, I'm looking forward to chatting with you about just the new music business, where we're headed as a business, new technologies, how do we see things shaping up, how do we see things integrating with some of the things that we have come to rely on over the years. You know, we're obviously in a period of big, large-scale change, and I have found things that have helped me as a creator and as a producer, like, you know, still kind of thrive and survive in these times. But I'm fascinated to hear what other people are looking at and what you feel are like exciting things, scary things, you know, cool stuff that we can look towards as we move forward.
Thank you, Matt. I am frozen, but I'll just soldier on unless you want to stop. But thank you, first off, for that introduction. It was overly kind, and I'm honored to be here and have had such respect for you as a musician, as someone who serves the song and has advanced the community. And it's no surprise to me that you are now embracing some of these new technologies like social tokens. It's a challenging time, for sure. Is it more or less challenging now than it has been? I think COVID would certainly classify this time as more challenging, right? Pre-COVID, I don't know. The jury's out. I mean, I have been doing this long enough so that I remember, you know, the era pre-internet and running a record company. And my problem with that era was that you had these kind of gatekeepers, and as someone who ran a record company, I was one of those gatekeepers, and that didn't work for me, and that's because it's, you know, being an arbiter of taste is so subjective, and so you'd have you know, so many people trying to get their music heard, and really the only way, in any material way, to do it was through a label, and you'd have to go through this just torturous kind of process. And you know, then along comes Pro Tools, along comes social media, along comes the internet, those types of things, and it really did level the playing field, and allowed for access. And, you know, of course, when everybody has access, the market gets flooded. But I would still opt for that, to be very honest. I still would rather live in a world in which, you know, when everyone has the same tools, he, she, or they uses them most creatively versus someone who has the most money or the uncle at the label or whatever. But to your point, it really does require that kind of, you know, I love the spirit with which you presented that, like the cool things. And cool is one of those words that can mean a lot of different things. But for me, it's, you know, what are those moments out there, technology or otherwise, that kind of gets the hair on the back of your neck standing up, gets that dopamine flowing, and that pushes you towards creativity. At the end of the day, technology should be invisible, right? Clarke's third law is that sufficient technology is indistinguishable from magic. So again, as someone that's been doing this for a long time, I've seen technologies evolve, right? From Pro Tools, which started out as a really, really expensive and hard to use system, to now, you know, there are products out there that for not a lot of money, you can make decent, you know, recordings. And then with Tunecore, our whole mission was, well, let's disintermediate all of the players that are sitting between the musician and access to the marketplace, whether that's a truck or a record store or a label or distributor. Let's, you know, and some of them provided value. I mean, record stores did and still do provide values, but a lot of them didn't. And a lot of them were what's known in kind of economic terms as rent seekers, people that are just sort of profiting without adding value. And so the technology that I've been most excited about for the past 10 years or so is decentralized ledger technology, which is a fancy way of saying blockchain. And again, people hear about it a lot right now. It's in the news. Crypto is in the news, and if you strip away all of the kind of speculation around, you can make a lot of money by buying at the right time or whatever, and rather view it as an enabling technology to help artists not only better and more efficiently connect and find and empower their fans, but also to reduce transaction costs for payments and put the ownership back in the hands of the artists and the fans. That's what's exciting to me. And we're at the early stages of it. You, as someone who is constantly forward thinking, you're an early adopter around things like social tokens, and the work that you're doing is really important because it flattens the learning curve for others who for whatever reason don't have either the technological bias, the access to the tools. I mean, it's very easy as a white male, privileged white male, to be like, oh, go mint an NFT or something. But to do that requires a certain level of education, a certain level of access that is not evenly distributed. So, we're in the early days of it. We need to really focus on making it what I call or refer to as a positive sum gesture, meaning this isn't something where if blockchain does effectualize change for independent musicians, it doesn't do so at the expense of the labels, right? They can win as well. And it's not that kind of binary I win, you lose, which it should make it much more inclusive. And once you start making things more inclusive, you get unexpected kind of collisions with other people, other thought processes, other markets, and then you expand the total addressable market. And that's what's exciting to me, that we can start finding new uses and new revenue streams for musicians that we've never thought of and wouldn't, because we keep siloing it in the same kind of modality, which is really a kind of white male capitalist modality, and that's really just a part of the world, and a really small part when you think about it. So it's exciting for me to kind of be at the early days of this again. But what's most exciting is that unlike kind of Web 1 and Web 2, which were very dominated by kind of information scarcity, like I know how to code, you don't, I'm going to build the tools. My mandate right now is I'm not going to build any tools for artists without artists being in the room. Right. And if you look at something like a Spotify or an MLC, to be quite honest, a music licensing collective, those were all quote unquote tools that were built by a very specific group of people. And they'll argue this, but they're wrong and they're lying, without like independent artists and actual artist stakeholders in the room to have their voices heard. These new technologies, whether they're DAOs or social tokens or what have you, do allow for that to happen. And so, sorry for the long speech, but that's really the overarching.
This is exactly what we want to hear, George. And this is a very, very important thing for creators to understand, because we're talking about crypto, we're talking about new ways to monetize, right? And we're talking about revenue. And I have a question for you, based on what you're saying, right? Which is, we move to a decentralized ledger system, right? That's a great idea. The labels, you say, should be on board with that. Traditionally, there's just a lot of accounting in the music business in general. This is sort of my most sort of diplomatic version of it. But the accounting and getting all the right monies to the right artists has always been a very difficult issue. Do you feel like now that streaming is the main form of distribution, and that we have new stakeholders and new paradigms and new technologies and all the stuff that you just brought up in your opening, do you feel like now we have even the right tools out there to collect those royalties? How will blockchain help? Has somebody launched an actual product that will be the nice digital rights tool that can answer the problems that you've laid out?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I mean, there are two things, right? There's the financial elements, right? Which, unquestionably the ways in which music copyrights and the creators behind those copyrights, the way that money is fractionalized is really, really broken, right? And ineffective and inaccurate and everything else. But it's deeper than just, oh, I wrote this song and I didn't get paid in a timely or accurate fashion. That is a kind of high level, issue, and not to be understated. But it goes much deeper than that. And you, I'm sure, resonate with this deeply. Like, better than almost everyone how many people it takes to actually make a recording, right? Not to mention market it and promote it. But if you are not categorized as a songwriter in the sense of from the legal, and I'm a lawyer, from the legal standpoint, someone that has standing in the copyright, and typically that's someone who writes the melody and the lyric, and then on the other side, someone who owns the master recording. So, you think about someone like James Jamerson or any of these just wonderful side people who defined culture with their playing, but had no economic claim to the exploitation of the work. That's the bigger issue, right? And so, and then right along with that is the credit, right? So if you try to figure out who the author of certain songs are, you will get answers, and a lot of times they're wrong. They've been appropriated, right? And typically the appropriation is white people appropriating works from people of color without credit. So technologies like blockchain, because of its innate qualities, allow for both the fractionalizing and more direct payments to a wider group of stakeholders, but also for an immutable record of creators. And so both are equally important to me, because I really want a record of voice. I want reclamation of voice. I want people to know that no, it was not Elvis who wrote Hound Dog. That's important culturally. It's important because when young people grow up, they need to look for exemplars of people who look like they do, right? And so if they don't think that those people ever created anything, then that's harmful to the advancement of just kind of someone's self-esteem. So we need to focus on both those things. In terms of, are people doing it? Yeah, it's coming. It's blockchain technology is being deployed widely across so many industries. Most people don't even realize how widely it's out there. It's tricky in music because of that bifurcated copyright system, but it's happening quickly, and essentially I think the kind of the tip of the iceberg, meaning there's a lot underneath of it, but what's visible right now are these NFTs, right? That seems to have captured the imagination of the creative economy, which is great. Right now it's very speculative in nature, and I think most people who talk about NFTs don't really understand them, but that's okay, because it's bringing awareness and money into the ecosystem. But ultimately, I believe that all songs will be an NFT. And the way you think of it is, as a car has a title to that car that signifies ownership, and that car also might have like a Carfax record or something where you can see who owned it prior, etc. Songs should have that same thing. And that this... And can and do.
Technically,
right.
Now they can, right?
Yes, right. So the NFT is the analogy of kind of the title for the car, but it's on a blockchain. And what's significant about that is that blockchains are decentralized, meaning no one person or institution owns them, which is really important because, ASCAP owns their database, Warner Brothers owns their database, and those databases don't talk with others, and we don't know of their accuracy. And as I mentioned earlier, the data that's written to a blockchain, it can't be taken down. It can't be destroyed. You can add new records to it in the same way somebody edits a Wikipedia page. But if you go to Wikipedia, you can see the changelog. You can see that someone wrote this. So it solves both the kind of credit, the historical elements, but also through something known as smart contracts, a way in which you can really stipulate how much credit and therefore ownership and profit participation or whatever decision making each of the participants in the song gets, whether or not they actually are ascribed copyright validity by the copyright code. So I did a project, myself and people far smarter than I did a project recently called The Song That Owns Itself, where we worked with this amazing band called Superposition. They wrote a song, they took the rights to that song, they assigned the rights to that song to what's known as a DAO, D-A-O, which stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organization, which is a fancy term for a contract that is held on the blockchain that has a set of rules that will automate based on other things happening without any human intervention. So they said, okay, we're going to assign this song to this DAO. Now that means the song now owns itself, but we, Superposition, are going to forever keep 50% of any and all money that comes in. So if $1 comes in from Spotify, they're forever going to get 50 cents, right? We're then going to allocate other percentages of equity or of revenue from that song based on performance, right? So right now we look at the ecosystem of the musicians and we go, okay, for a song to be a hit, you have to make the song. And as you know too well, most often like the engineers, the producers, yeah, they're going to get paid. And sometimes if you're a really well-known producer, you might get some points, but they're not that many points on songs. But then that's it. And that may or may not be fair, right? Like It may be, well, wow, that producer actually really did was really, really important to the success of this, and maybe they should have a bigger interest. But then you think about labels, and sure, labels do perform a service up to a point. It bothers me, terminally, about the idea that right now Warner Brothers and these major labels are literally getting fire hoses of money for records that they have not lifted a finger to promote for literal decades, right? And you can argue, yeah, they took the initial risk and they did that, and that is true, and they should be compensated for that. But should they really continue to get 85 to 90% of all of the money just by keeping it in stock?
Now,
and so
they're getting the lion's share of the money, because I want to highlight this and I want to ask you your honest opinion. Is the reason they're getting that big piece of the pie, per se, mostly because of dysfunction, and they were able to make, deals amidst the dysfunction that they were able to just, as natural business people, capitalize on? Or is there some sort of other thing at play? Like, where is the imbalance actually coming from? And then I would love to hear a little bit on that. And then also, I didn't want to miss something that hit my head, which is at scale with the DAO and the Song That Owns Itself. At scale, if enough fans buy into a song, does that bridge on the concept of direct royalties? Which is, I have this discussion with a lot of people who say fans should just own their favorite artist's stuff and sort of be invested in it via a social token or via a coin, right? And that all middle road should be out, and that it should just be a direct fan financial relationship with the artist. So 2 questions, and feel free to riff on either one, but it was really cool to hear where you see things headed with that ledger, and I just wonder if that is the future. Where are we going with that?
Yeah, no, a great question. So first, in terms of why labels maintain the lion's share, to a great degree, it is because of those asymmetries, right? And the asymmetries historically were, I'm an artist, I don't have the money to go into a studio, and so the labels would pay for that in exchange for their perpetual ownership in the sound recording. Pro Tools comes along and sort of obviates that to a degree. The cost of recording goes down. Labels go, well, fine, but you can't distribute the record on your own. So in order for the exchange, we're going to keep your sound recording forever. And many artists would say, okay. And then companies like Tunecore and others enter the market, and you don't need a label to distribute. And the labels go, yeah, but you still need us for promotion. And social media, et cetera, comes in, and now artists can, in theory at least, have a direct relationship. I'm unclear at this point what the labels are continuing to offer that would give them claim to 85 to 90% of the income. And then additionally, those services that they rendered at the time were valuable, and they should be repaid for those services. But once that money's recouped, look, you've got the law of contract on your, if you sign a bad contract, you kind of have to deal with that. But over time, institutions, labels, whatever, that are built on kind of unethical foundations always crumble, right? It's in the best interest of everyone, because name me an artist right now that's like, yeah, I love my label. Like, you hear that for a little while, but typically it's an at best kind of mutually kind of frustrated existence, and that's not the right way to go.
Or it's a friend, it's a relationship based.
Well, but that's at the beginning. And again, I'm speaking much more about the major labels, right? Yeah. Look, I ran a small independent label where I was in the bands, I was on tour with them, I was, that's a different thing. Yeah. I think we may need a new term for that. But the traditional kind of major label deals are pretty odious, and what you're really trading your rights for is some pipe dream that you will be, the one in the million that kind of gets lucky, and it does happen, or validation. Hey, I signed to Warner's, Mom, and so that validates me. And the labels know that, and they know that both those things are the true reasons people sign, and so they'll never change their contracts. To your other point about the kind of middle, what should it just be artists who are kind of subsidizing or supporting or investing or whatever, and it should be fans investing. Yeah, that is great. But what's missing there is that the true need of the artist for the fan typically isn't money, right? It typically, like, if you're a scrappy artist, and I would say the same thing about if you're an entrepreneur in any field, like, you really need to self-fund your first business, your first record. You really do, right? You need to, what's known in entrepreneurial circles as bootstrap it. And so I'd rather have people go to their fans and then reward those fans not for cash, but for spreading the word, right? The fancy marketing term for this is called Net Promoter Score. And literally if anybody who's listening, or anybody, think about your favorite artist, think about your favorite movie, think about your favorite book, think about your favorite TV show, and ask yourself, did you learn about them from a label or from a publisher or whatever? No, you learned about it from a friend. And so a Net Promoter Score is how likely someone who has heard your music is to recommend it to a friend. And if you have a high Net Promoter Score, you will be a success. What we haven't had until social tokens and crypto generally is a way, to find that what I call most passionate percentile, those people, those fans that are like, I fucking love this band, right? Because all bands operate on what's known as a Pareto principle, right? Where 90% of like the energy and the enthusiasm for the band and the revenue comes from 10% of the fans. And the rest of the market is kind of like, yeah, they're fine, right? But so if you can identify that 10%, reward them when they tell friends via social media or whatever with a social token that then gives them access to more shit that the band puts out, that's the economy that I want, right? And that's the promise of social tokens.
So your head went exactly where my head went naturally, which is so cool, because I have one more question.
And just to finish that thought, and then I'll shut up. And so that's the whole point of the song that owns itself. The song that owns itself issues what we call STOI, STOI, song that owns itself, tokens whenever the song sees that a fan has done something to give the song what it wants, which is to be heard by more of the right people. And in that way, over time, the community kind of owns the song, and they're pushing it forward. And then the community gets to vote and say, well, let's have another song, and then the song regenerates. So I'll shut up now, but that's the thesis.
No, it's all good, because I have just one more question for you before we wrap this awesome chat. And I think this has been, first of all, really informative, and second of all, where you've just landed is where my head went when you were talking, which is like, wow, like, this is a new argument for the social token that I'm not sure everybody's heard yet. So I wanted you to just expand on, how does a social token answer the great need for what you're talking about, which is that community-based information exchange between fans. how does the social token as a tool
it's everything
help with that?
It's everything. Like, to me, social tokens are to 2021 what things like Twitter and Facebook or whatever were to like 2007 or 8, but hopefully in a much better version. What it allows to do is it allows you to identify through the people that are in your Discord community, your most passionate percentile, wherever those people are, every band, until you get 150 people who really fucking love you. You really just need to kind of work on your chops. Once you find those people, you really don't need more than 150. You issue them a social token and you say, look, if you do certain other things that you would do naturally anyway if you're a fan of the band, if you tell people about this and we're able to see that, even if it's like, I put up a poster in my wall on my dorm room and I took a picture of it. It can be offline, or it can be, I did an Instagram story on it or whatever, then we are going to give you more of these social tokens, which is going to give you access to our unreleased songs or whatever. And we're going to give you social tokens to give to your friends, right? So that they can then enjoy this too. And that's social marketing at its finest. But now we finally have a way to measure and reward that most passionate percentile. And it doesn't require a label. All it requires, and I go back to the first thing I said, when everybody has access to the same tools, he, she, or they who use them most creatively wins. And that's what's exciting to me right now. We don't yet know the best practices around social tokens, etc. We're all experimenting. We're all learning from each other, and we're all teaching each other. And the system is designed for that. It's designed so that people can look to others and go, fuck, I'm going to learn from that and get better. And by doing that, you don't have these terrible information asymmetries and binary rules where, like, if I know something, I'm going to keep it a secret. It's not that way. If I learn a best practice about something that helps my band, I'm 100% going to tell others, because then the value of the whole ecosystem goes up. And that's really where we are. And we're at day one of it. And I cannot encourage people enough to tune into the things that you're doing, to get the emo token, to, like, the only way that you can truly learn this stuff is to just dive in.
Yeah,
and it's
how I've done it too.
It's a great community of people who want to help. It's not, sure, I mean, crypto's full of scammers and everything else. So is there, but like, if you focus on social tokens and artists who you love, the communities are there to help and support, because it's in their interest and it's your interest. So totally. I do need to wrap, but I love this conversation.
Good. That was the perfect place to close it. If people want to follow you on socials, where do they find you?
Yeah, Twitter, Instagram, I'm GAH650, GAH650, and hit me up. Like, I love this stuff, and all I want to do is help. And thank you, Matt, for what you're doing. You're really a true champion.
Thanks for joining us, and it was a great chat. All right. Take care, George Howard.
Thanks, bye.
Guys. See you next time.